Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irene. I'm the host of Fiberchats. My guest today is Dominique Calvillo. Hi, Dominique.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. The first thing I've seen about you was your fashion show and all the beautiful models walking on the walkway. Was that like your dream when you were growing up, or was that a complete surprise career for you?
That was a total surprise. Yeah, when I was growing up, my family was always really involved in music, and that was kind of my whole, life path for a very long time. And I had a very long career in the music industry. And then about 4 years ago, I started to crochet obsessively, and then it slowly dawned on me that what I was doing was fashion design. And then I started to get involved in the fashion industry and have done a few runways since then. But I completely fell into it. Never in a million years thought that this would be my job. So,
I often ask people, like, what's that moment when you realize you're a designer? Like, what was that for you?
the first time it really clicked for me, I got a call from a production company that was doing New York Fashion Week, and they asked if I would come do a runway. And I was like, you seem to think that I'm a fashion designer. That's bizarre. And then I thought about it and I was like, I guess that is what I'm doing.
How was it? Like, how nerve-wracking was it to go there and show your collection for the first time?
It was really surreal and really chaotic. I think that because of how busy you are, I don't really have time to be nervous. Um, and also, it's a total perk working with crochet that it's just so much easier to get people ready for runways. Like the other designers had to be like steaming or stitching or really fitting things perfectly to the models, and that can be really stressful. But with my stuff, like all I have to do is like pull it out of a bag, put it on a model, tie it up right, and then it's done. So I think that element of it was a lot more like relaxed than a lot of the other designers that I saw. But the whole like casting process and then like fittings and just making sure that everybody like gets on the runway, like the moments right before the runway are really, really chaotic. So yeah.
Let's talk about that casting, because unlike many designers, you don't go for the typical looking model in your designs. Like, you are very inclusive in like your sizing, the models that you pick. Why is that important to you?
It's so important to me because, again, I just kind of found myself in the fashion industry, but something that I've always noticed about the fashion industry that it was very narrow as far as what kinds of beauty were included and honored. So when I did become into a position where I could select who would be representing, like, not just my clothes, but also like, I think models kind of have this, like, this is the ideal of beauty. Like, I really want everybody to be able to look at my models and my runway and my page and to be able to see somebody that looks like them on there, be able to relate to somebody on my page, no matter, what body type or whatever. So,
And I honestly, like, that's what really caught my attention when I saw your Instagram page, because you have like every picture of a different woman with like different body type completely. Like, some of them are like super skinny and like what we think the model should look like, and some of them are like plus size, very voluptuous beauties there. But somehow, like, your things look beautiful on everyone. And it's like, because like I'm thinking, like, if somebody makes something with crochet is like almost see-through, right? So that sort of brings all the insecurities about your body out, because like it's more visible, but somehow your fashion makes everybody look absolutely beautiful.
oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I really like hope to encourage everybody through my art that I think that fashion is for everybody and everybody. And I really just hope that people feel that when they wear my designs. And even as a designer, I'm not designing for like the skinny model. Sometimes I'm designing for like a curvy woman. And I think that it's a lot more creatively free and stimulating to design for different body types. So sometimes, like, you know, the ideal for me is not, you know, just somebody that's skinny. It's, you know, somebody that's, it depends on what I'm making, but I definitely try to design for a very wide array of body types.
Well, so like, okay, you did that show, right? You decided you are a designer. But from that point to like to move into a business and to move into crocheting full time and like making a living out of it, like what was that journey like?
Yeah, I think it was a very slow journey. When I started my crochet page, again, I was just kind of doing it as like a fluke. I had no idea that I had no intention of creating what I've created now. It was more like, I think that my friends are getting annoyed because I'm posting all my crochet pictures on my Instagram, and maybe I should like have a designated area for those. So I created my page, and then I started to post on my page, and then people started to reach out to me for custom pieces. And that was a whole other like revelation of like, wow, like somebody wants to make something that I made. Like, that's so crazy to me. So I did start to do custom pieces. And then right in 2020, when the pandemic hit, is when I released my first pattern. I had really, I would say, resisted doing patterns because it involves a lot of math. It involves a lot of like being very technical and very exact, and that's just so not my personality. So I was very like resistant to that whole thing, but I finally decided to learn how to write patterns, and I released my first pattern, and I haven't looked back since. Once I started releasing patterns, it became full time.
When you were writing that first pattern, I mean, it's one thing to take your hook and to take your yarn and see where it's going to take you, right? Just improvise with you. And I've heard like on you, I saw on your Instagram that you basically doing this improvisational style and just like letting your hook wander. To write a pattern, it's like it takes a lot of discipline, because as you crochet, you're supposed to write everything down like step by step. Was that difficult thing for you to learn how to do?
Well, yes and no. I think the first pattern that I wrote was the angel skirt, which is like basically this one piece of pineapples all the way down. And I chose that piece because I thought that it would be a good way to learn the different types of stitches and how to write them, but also not have to deal with things like seaming. And it was very easy to like make different sizes out of it because it's just a pineapple repeat. So it was difficult, but it was nice to be able to get the hang of it, just working on this pineapple pattern and really learning different stitches and just doing it all in a big round.
And do you love crocheting the same piece again and again? Do you like, once you're done with the piece, you're like, okay, I'm done, like next?
I do like doing patterns again because I feel like every time I do it, I kind of perfect it. When I do a custom, of course, it's different for every single client. I'm never going to make the same exact dress twice unless I'm doing like pattern samples. They're going to be different. So that is fun. Like, I like to customize it a little bit per person. But when I go to write a pattern, I usually try to make the same piece at least like 4 times.
When I look at your runway models, it's like very earthy tones, majority of it. And then 1 or 2 gonna be like this pop of color and something like really eye-catching. Mm-hmm. Is that like stepping outside of your comfort zone? Like, are you more of an earthy tone girl?
Yeah, I don't know why. When I first started designing, I just found this like one cream colored cotton that I just liked, and I didn't branch out at all. So I didn't really make color. But yeah, lately I've definitely been really exploring and playing with color. Like, I'm actually doing a piece or like a series right now of like all pastels. I actually have them with me. I can show you. But it's all these like little glittery pastel colors. So I'm really starting to play more with color now. And I think also, like, when I first started designing, I was very much involved in the bridal industry. So all of the dresses and the gowns I was seeing were like white and cream and ivory. So I kind of went with that. And a lot of my dresses ended up being kind of bridal styles. And that is kind of the realm that I've fallen into, especially with the custom pieces. But now I'm really starting to like branch out, not make things so formal, play with bright colors, and it's been really fun.
I mean, like when you're doing a bridal gown, right? It's for one person only. You can't really like make 7 of them. Like every bride, you would want them to have something different. Do you like doing custom pieces, or do you prefer to like just write a pattern, sell a pattern, call it the day?
I mean, I love both. I really love both. I love writing patterns because I love to be able to empower other makers to make my designs. And also in my patterns, I really try to make it so that they can customize it for what they want. It makes me so happy when I see somebody that's like put their own spin on one of my designs and like really made it their own. But then at the same time, like I love creating something that's like really special for one person that like probably doesn't crochet themselves. So it would be like, I think, pretty impossible to pick between those two things.
When you do custom work, right, how does it work? Like, does the person for whom you're making something gives you an idea of what they want, or do you come and suggest like sketch few designs and tell them I can do that or I can do this?
Yeah, usually what I'll do with a bride is I'll sit them down and we'll have a consultation. And on my website, I have this huge gallery of like pretty much every piece that I've ever made. So we'll be like, I like this skirt, I like this top, but maybe we do like a slit or we do a train or however it is. So I really like to try to build out like the best dress for each person. Um, so yeah, that's kind of been my process with that.
Are you ever surprised at the final result, like when you finish it, that like it's way better than you envisioned or completely different than from what you envisioned?
Yeah, sometimes. I've had a few brides where they've made creative choices that I wouldn't necessarily go for, but once I see it and I see it on the person, and I'm like really happy. My other kind of like glitch with designing is that I don't draw. I'm a terrible drawer. Like it's actually easier for me to crochet an entire wedding dress than it would be to like sketch out an idea. So that can be tricky sometimes because it's like I don't know. I mean, I do try sometimes to just kind of be like, it'll look kind of something like this, but usually it's just piecing things together and then just praying.
Was there like ever an unsatisfied customer? Did you ever have a difficult customer experience?
No, thank God. I haven't. Yeah.
Well, let's backpedal a little bit. Let's talk about how did you learn how to crochet?
I learned from my mother and my grandmother. And it was crazy because my dad is one of 12 kids, so I have like 55 first cousins, and like I'm one of the younger ones. So when I came along, I didn't get a lot of like alone time with my grandmother, but the one thing that we did do together was crochet, and she would bring me to her crochet club. So yeah, I learned from her, and then I kind of always did it throughout my life. Like growing up, I would do it at Christmas or, like pretty typical. But then a few years ago, I started to really rely heavily on it as like a art therapy because it really gave me peace during a time that I was struggling with anxiety. So that's kind of when my design started to really develop and my kind of obsession started to really develop.
Well, I've read that you've been to South Asia and you were actually working with the human trafficking, right? And was that
Yeah.
when you started crocheting?
Yeah. Yeah, I had started to pick up crocheting a lot more right before that time. I actually paid for one of my trips by selling crochet scarves. Um, but yeah, when I was in Southeast Asia, I was working with survivors of human trafficking, and I was teaching, mostly what I was doing was teaching life skills to women that needed something to do to support themselves for reintegration. So that's what I was doing, and it was amazing. It was like the most fulfilling like time of my life, like story after story. I had like an incredible time, but at the same time I was also seeing like really dark, heavy, depressing things and kind of being confronted with the like horrendousness of humanity. So it was kind of a dual experience of like crazy joy, but then also just like seeing these things that I couldn't really wrap my mind around or reconcile. And so I really started to struggle with anxiety, and crochet really helped me during that time.
Do you remember like what kind of crochet you did at that time? Like, was that something like super simple, sort of mindless, like easy, so you can just get lost in your thoughts? Or did you strive for something like technically difficult?
I did start to, I was making blankets a lot, and I started to really play with blankets and get really into geometry and things like that. But then I decided that I wanted to try a garment. And because the whole point was for me to distract my mind, I wanted to do something that would like really stimulate me mentally. So I kind of went right for like a dress. And at first it was like a pencil skirt idea. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like make it too complicated. But the first garment that I ever made ended up being my Edith dress design, which is one of my most popular wedding dress designs. So I kind of just dove right into gowns, which is really weird, and I can't really explain it. But I think that focusing on something that was a little bit technically harder was good for my brain at the time.
Do you remember like the day or the moment when you decided that, because like I'm looking at you, you are super skinny, you are like the perfect model type,
Oh
right?
my God.
Like when did you decide, like what made you decide to become inclusive, like in your sizing and your fashion?
Um, I don't think that it was ever really a question for me. I mean, again, I wasn't really thinking in terms of like creating a fashion brand or anything, but um, when I did start to get more into making dresses, um, I started to make them in a way that I could put them on anyone. So a lot of my samples are like very, very adjustable, where like if I were to make a custom, I would make it very specific to somebody's body size. But a lot of the samples that I make, I've put on size 0 to like size 16. So um, yeah, I don't think that there was like an exact moment, but I think that when I started to like kind of develop my Instagram and like put my dresses on different people, I was like, okay, well maybe I should like, just make sure to have a lot of variety. And also like my friends and the people in my life are very diverse. And when I was starting my brand, it was just kind of like calling my friends up to be like, hey, can you model? So um, it's not like I just had access to all these like runway models right away. So yeah, I just
Let's talk about your friends. So your friends, like they knew you as a singer, right? So here you are, a singer with like promising career, who suddenly goes into full blown crochet business. What was their reaction? Were they surprised? Are they still surprised?
I think that yeah, I think that a lot of my friends are just like, who are you? Like, where do you come from? Like, I've always been very artistic and very outside of the box, especially with my life path. Like, I've never done things that were, typical. So I think that people are pretty much like used to that part of my personality. But I think that a lot of the people in my life were just as surprised as I was that I went into like fashion. So
Well, when you were younger, right, like back in school, let's say, when you were crocheting, were those pieces something you would wear, or was it like mostly toys, blankets, kind of things like that, accessories?
yeah, when I was younger, I used to make like definitely scarves and like beanies. I made these little like slippers for your feet. Um, but yeah, very like simple, just, kind of typical things that you would probably crochet.
Well, what would you wear back in high school? Like, were you very fashion forward?
Um, I tried to be. I was one of those people that was like so painfully awkward until I wasn't. It was like one day, like the braces came off, and I just kind of came out of this like bad dream of awkwardness that I had. But I think that I've always been very artistic and kind of out of the box when it came to like the way that I expressed myself. And in school, I was always involved in like theater and band and stuff. So I was never like your typical kid. And then I got a record deal when I was 17, and I was still in high school then. So along with the record deal came all kinds of fashion. I had a stylist all of a sudden. And so I was exposed to all this like new fashion that was kind of coming out, and it kind of like exploded my world a little bit.
Okay, so right now, what percentage of your wardrobe are things that you made?
I mean, I have a very extensive wardrobe. I have a bit of a shopping addiction. We're working on it. But yeah, I mean, I have a ton of crochet. Right now, my stuff is in a showroom. And a showroom is a place that like stylists and people can go pull for like photo shoots and videos and things like that. So most of my crochet is in the showroom right now. So I don't even have a lot of my crochet pieces with me. But when I do, it's like a closet full at least, and then like two suitcases full, like, and it's very quickly growing. Like this week I made like 3 dresses. So, okay.
When you crochet, when you make your pieces and you make it for other people, are you a perfectionist? Like, what's the quality of it?
I would say, I don't know if perfectionist is the right word, because I've really come to understand and believe that there is no such thing as perfect, especially when it comes to art. That being said, I am extremely particular. So I have been known to unravel things. Like, I think I unraveled a sleeve one time like 17 times. So I absolutely will be super nitpicky and take something apart over and over and over until it looks like the way that I want it to look. And whether or not that's perfection is, I guess, up to each person's opinion.
Well, when you started the business, right, did you have some sort of vision or some sort of dream where you want to take it? And where are you now in that dream?
Yeah, I think that, you know, once I kind of realized what was happening, because at first when I started it, I had no intention of any of this. But once I kind of realized, like, oh, I'm developing a fashion brand and stuff, I started to really dream of like creating a community that was centered around this idea of like art therapy, because that's how I started. And just, you know, I've met so many people that have shared in the fact that crochet gives them so much peace and it really helps them meditate. So I really like to focus on that within my community. I also really, it's really important to me to like advocate for diversity and inclusivity, and to really showcase people and different types of beauty that are not always honored. So that was another huge like mission for me. And then my other thing was that I really wanted to promote ethical fashion, and hopefully even employ people that are affected by human trafficking. That's been a little bit more tricky just because of the way that that whole system works. But I have employed artisans in Brazil that, you know, come from small villages, and it really helps them in their economy to have this work. So yeah, I think just empowering women and like artists and crafts is really important to me. So all of these things that I kind of set out to do, I think I'm definitely on the path of doing them. And of course I could always be farther along on the path, but I feel really good about the fact that I've like really stuck to my vision.
I mean, I'm listening to your story, right? And there is like part of me that thinks, oh my God, like everything went your way. Like all the stars aligned just perfectly, right? Like you're sitting home, you're crocheting for yourself. Suddenly you get this phone call that like, come be our designer and we're gonna showcase you. And like everything you do somehow like becomes successful. Was there ever like any struggle on the way? Like, was there ever any difficult moments when you doubted yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there are always, you know, especially when you're running a business, there are always really hard things that come along. you know, I've definitely made mistakes and had hiccups and all of that. But I think that because I didn't have so much of an expectation of what this was going to turn into, that kind of everything that happened ended up being like a delightful surprise that, you know, kind of came to me unexpectedly. But of course, like, you know, turning things into a business and having to get more serious about like sustaining my life, you know, doing this, it can be challenging. Like, and I think that one of the biggest things that I've learned in the process is that to really stick to my own voice. I've had different people kind of come in at certain points and be like, oh, I want to take over your branding, or I want to give you like, you know, I want to present you in a certain kind of way. And every time I did that, it ended up not sounding like my voice. It ended up not being like this authentic thing. So I think that that's the number one takeaway that I've gained, is always to like stick to my vision and to know that I understand my vision better than anybody else will.
How did the name Namaste and Crochet came to be a thing?
Yeah, well, when I, you know, started this whole thing, I was working a lot in Southeast Asia and in very like spiritual environments. And Namaste is a greeting that people say to one another, and it basically means like the love and light in me honors and recognizes the love and light in you. And I just thought that that was a really beautiful sentiment, and it I don't know, it really resonated with me. And kind of growing up in a Christian environment, I had never heard that word or been exposed to it. And it really became part of my spiritual practice and the way that I tried to like see other people. So yeah, and then I kind of realized that like it rhymed with crochet, and they kind of balance each other out, like they're the same amount of letters, and I just like the way that it sounded together. So it's like, that's it.
Well, do you want the people to know the brand, or do you want the people to know you and your name?
That is a very good question, and something that I've kind of had an identity crisis about lately. Because I recently I signed to a showroom and have become more, I would say like, I'm presenting myself as a designer more. And when I signed to the showroom, they were very confused about, why am I going by Namaste and Crochet? Like, that doesn't make sense in the fashion world to not go by your actual name. So I actually had to divide my business into two. And so I decided that Namaste and Crochet was going to be a space for makers, for community, for encouraging people to showcase what other makers are making and put those on the page. And then I've focused my own like brand, Dominique Calvillo, to be just the things that I make. So now I have like two branches of my business, two Instagrams that I run. One is like the stuff that I make, and then one is like, this is the community, this is the stuff that other people are making that maybe I've designed, or so.
So tell me about the community, because like building your brand on Instagram is sort of frustrating, I would say, from my experience, because one day you post something and the post does magnificently. The next day you post something you think should perform as well or better, and crickets, like nothing, nobody sees it.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with social media? Like, how do you plan it all?
Man, social media, what a landmine. I mean, I think on one hand, it's incredible. Like, I've met so many friends on social media. It allows me to connect to like the entire world, basically. But obviously, like things like algorithms and trying to figure out like what's going to get engagement, how do I connect the best with people, can be really frustrating. So yeah, I try not to get too hung up on it, but it can be frustrating sometimes, especially when it's like I've poured my heart and soul into something and then I feel like nobody sees it, or yeah, so that can be hard. But at the same time, it's like there are so many people that have like met through my page, or that like encourage each other on my page, and I've met so many friends, and it's like I think that it's provided way more good than bad in my life, for sure.
When you started writing those patterns, how did you pick your testers, and what was that experience like? Was there like always a great experience? Who makes great testers for you?
So that was a really interesting process because I had never even, I still have never followed a pattern. Like, I don't know how. Like, I don't know what that process is like. I did not know what the process of testing was like nothing. I met two friends initially that said that they would help me with testing my designs. So for the first like, I want to say like 4 or 5 patterns I released, I only had 2 testers that were like helping me make sure that they made sense. And I was planning to proceed that way, but then I quickly learned that like, no, you need to test out like all these different sizes and all of that. Um, so I put together kind of like a testing group, but I'd also had a lot of experience of like, if I would pull somebody in that I didn't know, they would bail on me or like, it was just very unreliable. So I didn't know how to run a testing group or how to set expectations or any of that. And I met one of my friends, Chelsea from Knitting Tipsy, and invited her to test my Luna skirt for me. And then I had gotten like back a few people's notes and just decided to like release the pattern, and Chelsea hadn't given me her notes yet. And I didn't even have a deadline. And Chelsea was kind enough to say like, hey, that was like not your typical testing experience. Like, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, can you tell me what the experience usually is? Like, can you tell me about how this process goes? And she was like, she was so gracious and kind to like explain how it works, explain like who you should have and what you should expect. And so that was really helpful. And kind of from there, it was all referral. Like I just wanted to work with people that other people had mentioned were really good and reliable. So that's kind of been how I've picked my testers. And then I did have like an application for testing on my website for a while, but I was getting so many applications and it was just kind of overwhelming. So now when I go to pick testers, I usually stick with the people that I know are like really reliable and like will balance out my non-technical brain with their like hopefully like a lot of them are like type A personalities that are like very good at math and grammar and things like that.
I mean, is that what you look for? Because like I test a lot of patterns, and to me, like I noticed that testers like divide into a few groups. Like there are testers who are not great at like correcting your grammar and correcting your math, but they will make beautiful items. They will be on time. They'll take beautiful pictures. They'll promote you all over the place, right? And then there are people who will know every comma that you're missing and every number that like wrong, or they'll spot it right away, but they'll take no pictures or very mediocre pictures, and they would have like no, like, how do you decide who is your ideal tester in this respect?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like to pick people that that will get my grammar and my math together. And then I also have a tech editor who's amazing that she always makes sure that everything is right. But then, yeah, I do look for people that are active in the community and that do take good pictures, because pictures are, kind of everything at this point. And then also, like, of course, different body types. Yeah, so I have like a variety of reasons why I pick people, but yeah, I think you're totally right. It's like you kind of have to have people that are good at different things, and that's why you need a team. That we can't all be good at everything all the time, so we have to help each other.
Do you still sing? Do you still record yourself?
Sometimes both of my sisters and like my entire family is really, really musical. So I get pulled into things all the time, but as far as like focusing on it or like um, trying to do it as more of a career, I've really like taken a break and I just do it for fun when I want to.
You ever question yourself about like whether that's the right decision, like how far you could have taken your singing career versus how far this will take you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I think by the time that I decided to take a break from music, I desperately needed a break. I had been in it since I was like a kid, and like really intensely so. Um, and also like I'm still really connected into the music industry. So if I did want to pick it back up, I could like have a career in it pretty easily, I would say. But I think that um, there's so much about music that I don't understand. Like I am a singer, but you know, as far as like, you know, producing records and like mixing things and just all these things that like, you know, people in my life are so cued into, I don't really quite understand them. Whereas like with with visual art and with, you know, fashion and geometry and things that are more visual, I feel a lot more empowered as an artist. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I just feel like I can do a lot more on my own as a fashion designer than I can as a singer. I feel more dependent on other artists as a singer, whereas with the fashion stuff, I can just do whatever I want and like make it work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I've been having this conversation a lot lately. People are like, "Why aren't you singing?" And I'm like, eh. So maybe this is a sign that I should start thinking about it more.
Or you can perhaps even combine your singing with the fashion show. Like who said you can't do the
Yeah,
fashion show to
yeah.
your own songs?
Yeah, and I've done that. Like I recorded like my runway music one time and like sang on my runway music. So it was like you're singing my designs and then hearing my voice. So that was cool. Um
Well, you
yeah.
mentioned that you started crochet basically as a way to deal with depression and anxiety. Does crochet ever give you anxiety? Like all this, you know, being in the world of fashion and like announcing to the world that you're a designer, and now there's this expectation of you coming with better and more interesting things and newer things and staying on the edge.
Yeah. I don't really think that that part of it gives me anxiety. I think because I didn't have like a I want to say like a classical training with crochet, or even with fashion, that I don't abide by any rules, and everything that I make is going to be super out of the box, and it's going to be something that's like probably never been seen before the way that I've done it. So that part of it doesn't give me anxiety. Um, I think that more so what gives me anxiety is like staying on top of it as far as like a functioning sustainable business, and like making sure that um that I'm just doing a good job as a business owner. That can be stressful sometimes, but on the creative side of things, like I don't really feel pressure or like too much expectation. I feel like every time I do something, people are not they're not like expecting it from me, you know?
Well, tell me, like, describe me your day, like, because you have your custom pieces, right? That you have to, there's wedding, there's deadline, you have to do it, you have to crochet. Then you have your design, you have to write the pattern, you have to test it, you have to run the group, you have to, I mean, you're a one-woman show, basically. How do you manage it all? Like, describe me your day. How do you break it for yourself?
Is a good question. I think um in the first half of my day, I get all of like my emailing and all of my logistical stuff done, like, you know, all of the boring adulting side of things I do just kind of right away when I'm fresh. And then it kind of depends on the season that I'm in. Sometimes I'm in a season where like I'm focusing on like writing a pattern and really focusing on that, or, you know, I have a custom order. So it kind of depends. I don't think that I do like all of the things in one day, but I know that like maybe like this week or this month, I'm going to be focusing on this one thing, and then I'll transition into like something else.
Have you ever been a planner? Have you always like organized your day and were on schedule and knew how to divide responsibilities?
No, I am so not a planner. I am not a scheduler. I mean, my testing groups could tell you like they probably or think it's maddening that I'm just like, yeah, you know, whenever it's done, it's fine. Like it's whatever. Um, yeah, I've never really been like a scheduler, or like I've never followed a schedule. Like I've always been, for the past like 10 years, I've been a self-employed artist in like different like facets. So every single day has always been different for me. I think I'm like allergic to schedules. So I'm definitely not a scheduled person. That being said, I am extremely self-motivated and could even be a bit of a workaholic. So I don't really need something to like keep me on pace. If anything, I need like reminders to like take a break, to relax, to eat something, to get some sleep. So yeah, to answer your question, no, I am not a scheduler.
Well, what do you do to spoil yourself? Like if you take a break, like what would be you be doing?
I love to go shopping. I go shopping a lot actually, even just as a part of my business to get like inspiration. I love to go out. I live in Los Angeles, so I go out a lot. I go to like jazz bars or dance clubs or whatever. I love to be social. I love to hang out with my family. Yeah, I like to travel.
Well,
And
coming from like such a large family, right? Are you, do you think like crochet is your me time, like separating yourself from the world?
sometimes, yeah, I can get very like, it definitely feels like a little like cocoon sometimes. Like um, the past 2 days, actually, I just like sat in my room by myself all day and crocheted. And a lot of times I'll do it like in complete silence and just like really use that time to meditate. But I don't really feel like it isolates me because I usually bring it with me wherever I go. Like the other night I went to a concert and I brought it with me. So I think it's just something that I can always like have, and I like to share it with the people in my life too.
If you sit outside and crochet and somebody comes to you and asks you like, oh, what is it that you're making? Do you tell everybody that you're a designer? Like how far do you go into?
um yeah, it depends. Like sometimes I feel like talking about it and sometimes I don't. If I'm making something and somebody asks me about it, I'll tell them. Or like if I'm like wearing something that I've made and people are like, oh, I like your shirt, then like it depends on what mood I'm in. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, thanks, I made it. And then sometimes I'll be like, thanks, end of story. um but you know, more times than not, like I like to share about, you know, what I'm doing and my business and my art with everybody that wants to know. So
Do you have a celebrity moment when you didn't know how a person knows you? Like if they think you're the famous singer or you're a famous crochet designer?
um I mean, I have been like recognized for being the designer of Namaste and Crochet before, and that's always like super like sweet and flattering. Um yeah. And then of course like at fashion shows, like people know that you're the designer of what they just saw, so that's kind of cool. Um so yeah, it happens every now and then.
Do you still have those 3 pet chickens?
Yes, actually, I live at the same house as like a few, like it's kind of like a little compound farm situation now. So I have like 14 chickens, but I don't take care of them as much as I took care of like just the 3 little chickens. Now there's like just more of like a bunch of them that we feed.
What's your relationship? Like why chickens? Like why is it important to you? Like are you into the whole sustainable living and like living on the land?
Yeah, I think I was really trying to get into, yeah, being more sustainable, and like, you know, fresh eggs are really nice and chickens are really easy pets. So it was something that I was kind of, you know, doing during the pandemic, and it was super fun. And now my chickens have joined like the rest of the chickens, and we get like a ton of eggs every day. So yeah, it's fun.
Do you like to cook?
I do, but I've had this like mental block in my brain about it. Also, I live with like 2 chefs that are just like absolutely amazing. So I just kind of like eat whatever they're making all the time, and I'm super spoiled. But I do like to cook, yeah.
Well, I mean, do you delegate anything to other people? Do you find it easy to delegate tasks to other people, or are you control person?
I think I've gotten much better at delegating, especially recently. I hired somebody to help me with my social media, which has been so amazing and helpful. And then I did hire like a marketing team. So they've been helping me just like get my brand like really together, and did like a rebrand on the websites, and then helped me kind of put together these like Facebook ads. So, and then I have my showroom team now too. So they're constantly doing my PR and sending my pieces out to different photo shoots or whatever. So I do have a team now. It's a newer thing. So I'm still getting used to like the luxury of having a team. That's very nice. I highly recommend, if you can delegate, definitely do so.
Where do you see this going? Like, do you have now that you have a team, right? So they have ideas, you have ideas. How far do you want to take it? Like, are you still seeing yourself as the only maker? Are you gonna hire a team of people who are gonna crochet your patterns?
Yeah, actually, I have teamed up with a manufacturer in Brazil. So they've been helping me make things. And I definitely want to expand on that. Most of the women that I'm working with are from like smaller villages in Brazil. So um, it's really important to me to um, support them. And I would love to, be able to like pay them often and well. So I would love to grow that side of things, and like take more orders from stores and take more custom orders. So I definitely want to like grow that element of it. And then I also really want to grow the maker side of everything, where, I'm creating more patterns, creating like, I want to do like a book of dresses, like just a way to explain how to combine like all of my tops with all of my skirts, and different ways that you can customize them into like your own perfect dress. So I have a lot of ideas as far as like expanding upon the like crafting side of my brand. And then um, being in this new showroom and starting to get like publications, and celebrities are wearing my stuff now. It's really exciting, and I hope to grow that part of the business as well. So I definitely like, I want to grow on all sides, but sometimes I feel like I just have my brain in 100 different places.
Well, is there a celebrity that you would like absolutely love to make something for?
Oh man, I actually made something for a celebrity that was like, I can die happy now as a designer. I
Oh,
made
no.
I made a jacket for this man named Dean White, and he's the bass player for Earth, Wind, and Fire. I don't know if you've heard of that band.
Oh, yeah.
But I grew up watching him, and my family's obsessed with music, and in Earth, Wind, and Fire is just this like very influential band. So I always like grew up watching him, and he's an amazing performer and just a fashion icon. Like he always had like the coolest, like craziest outfits on. And a couple of years ago, I met him at like a recording session, and he asked me if I would make him something. And I about died. Like they had to like pick me up off of the floor and like smack me back to consciousness. And so I got to make him like this cool like fringy jacket with a lot of beads. And he told me that he wears it pretty often. So that was like a total dream come true for me. I was like, I guess I can just like if my career ended tomorrow and I knew that had happened, that would be like enough for me. But moving forward, like I think my ultimate would probably be Beyonce. Like I love Beyonce. I think that she's incredible, inspiring. I love like her fashion, and if I made something for her, then maybe I would die happy. I don't know.
Well, if Beyonce's people are listening,
Yeah.
please
Call me
contact.
Beyonce. Call me.
So what's in the works right now? Like what are you working on? What's upcoming?
Well, like I said, I've definitely been branching out as far as like my design style. And I think obviously crochet is really like in right now. Like if you go anywhere, if you go to Forever 21 or just like any of the popular stores, you're going to see crochet right now. So um, it's been really fun to kind of see the styles and the trends that are happening. And I get a lot of inspiration from that. But then I also love to make things that are like in an elevated, like high end type of fashion. So I think that I'm really just trying to like play right now. I'm really trying to get out of my box of like kind of the style that I had been running with for a while. I showed you my little dresses made of chains. So in a couple of days, I'll be like unleashing those new designs, and they're very different from anything that I've made before. But I think that what you guys can expect from me moving forward is going to be like lots of color and like innovative new things that I have not done before.
Well, I saw one dress that was sort of like Mexican colors inspired, like traditional dress.
Mm-hmm.
How much of like your background inspires you when you crochet?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think a lot of the times when I'm creating, the like ancestors are talking to me for sure. And definitely when I made the Ode to Frida dress, which is like very traditional Mexican style, I felt very connected to like, you know, the style of like my aunties and my grandma and, you know, the women in my life and that are very connected to like Frida Kahlo and like Mexican art. And I come from like a very long line and like just a really rich family background that's full of art. So I definitely attribute a lot of my artistic expression and abilities to like my family being that way.
Well, you mentioned that your grandma took you to the crochet group, right? What was the
Mm-hmm.
name of that group?
Happy Hookers. Which is so funny because they were like these very devout Catholic women. I'm like, do you even know what that means?
Well, do you think like Happy Hookers expected you to become the designer that you are today? Do you think they like super impressed with your progress?
Oh, absolutely not. And it's kind of crazy because I didn't start to really design until like kind of right after my grandma died. So I almost think that like maybe some of her creative energy like fluttered over to me. But I really do wish that I could like share that with her. I mean, I know that like, you know, I believe that she's like watching down on me, but I do wish that I could like have a conversation with her and be like, hey, this is what I do now. This is what I make. And like, thank you for teaching me. That'd be really cool.
I think she would be very proud of you.
Aw, thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I can't wait to see your next collection and what else you're going to create.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you too. I feel like you asked me all these questions, but now I like want to know all about you.
Oh, so we can do it next time the other way around.
Yes, exactly. We'll have to do this again.
Thanks so much, Dominique. Thank you.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you.